It was assumed she would be vulnerable, simply another black woman living alone. What they failed to realize was that she had support monitoring their every action. The moving truck arrived on a Tuesday, late morning. This was a time when most people were at work or running errands. However, in Roseville, California, early retirement and home offices meant that people observed everything. And someone was already observing from across the street before the lift gate even touched the driveway. Rochelle Carrington, age 42, stood beside her black SUV, a clipboard held in her hand, offering the movers hushed directions. She was tall, with a self-assured stance and a tranquil gaze, moving with the grace of someone who conserved her energy. Her attire consisted of jeans, boots, and a long-sleeved t-shirt, marked with a small breakfast stain, a detail she disregarded. This was not a display of style. It was the beginning of a new phase in her life. She had finalized the purchase of the two-story home just 1 month earlier. It featured a Spanish tile roof, beige stucco, and neatly trimmed hedges. This was a place that declared, "I built this." And she had, though not as her neighbors imagined. The first visitor was a tall man wearing khaki shorts and a golf cap. He identified himself as Douglas Varnell, the head of the HOA. His handshake was brief and impersonal, and he avoided eye contact. "Are you moving in by yourself?" he inquired, observing the security camera boxes near the front door. "No, not everyone is here yet." "Well, if you need anything, we maintain order here," Douglas stated, briefly looking at the SUV before departing without acknowledging her. She observed him vanish behind his hedges. By sundown, Rochelle had unpacked sufficiently to consider the space habitable. Her home office was established, blinds were in place, and the kitchen was supplied. There were no signs, no music, and no boisterous visitors. Only her. Some plants adorned the porch, and a single folding chair was present. The following morning, a note was slid beneath her doormat. Reminder: all porch decor must adhere to HOA regulations. Flags, religious items, and political messages are prohibited. No name, no signature, just that. She chuckled. She didn't have a flag displayed, only a hand-painted ceramic sun her niece created in art class. It was hung askew beside the door. That afternoon, while adjusting her mailbox height, as the HOA had noted it was non-uniform, she observed a woman in yoga pants walking her dog slowly past her house. The dog paused, sniffing the grass, and the woman's gaze lingered a moment too long. "You new here?" the woman asked. "Looks like it," Rochelle responded, straightening. The woman offered a strained smile. "Well, the HOA is quite particular. It helps maintain the appearance of the neighborhood." "I'm familiar with the guidelines," Rochelle stated. The woman chuckled, but the sound lacked warmth. "That's good. We value a specific aesthetic for our neighborhood." The implication was unmistakable. Unbeknownst to them, beyond any prediction they could make, she had done more than simply read their book. She had studied classified briefing reports capable of disconcerting a senator. She had overcome language barriers, handled explosives, and participated in clandestine negotiations in countries she couldn't disclose. A neighborhood association would not deter her. Nonetheless, something felt amiss. She had relocated frequently, new towns, new cities, but the welcome felt staged. A forced pleasantness, conversations tinged with observation. Consequently, she installed the cameras, not out of suspicion, but out of readiness. One positioned above the door, another at the side entrance, and two angled in the front yard, addressing areas overlooked by most. That night, she stood on her porch with a glass of water, observing the street lights activate. A breeze rustled the leaves, and a lone car passed slowly, increasing its speed once it cleared her driveway. She felt no immediate danger, but also lacked a sense of ease. She dispatched a brief message from a disposable phone to a contact listed as Deb's Plumbing. Message content: settle incomplete. Activity already odd. Logging first flags. Standby. There was no response. She didn't require one. However, despite the stillness of that first week, Rachel sensed that the tranquility wouldn't persist for long. Within the second week, a subtle unease began to develop. The first sign was a formal notification affixed to her mailbox concerning parking regulations. The notice stated, "Driveway must be kept clear of oversized vehicles. Please use garage for storage." Her SUV was properly positioned, not obstructing pedestrian access, not encroaching on a neighbor's property, and it accommodated comfortably within the driveway. She removed the notice and placed it in the recycling bin. The following day, an unfamiliar man stood at the edge of her lawn, arms crossed, observing her as she watered the succulents in front of her bay window. "Hello," she called out. He remained silent, simply staring, before slowly walking away. That night, a second note appeared, printed entirely in capital letters. It read, "No unauthorized vehicles. Surveillance is active. HOA monitors street traffic." Surveillance. The irony caused her to laugh. She reviewed the surrounding area once more. Everything appeared normal, with the exception of a mounting feeling that someone, or multiple individuals, disapproved of her presence. Several days passed, and then the police arrived. It was shortly after 6 p.m. golden sunlight illuminating the porch. A patrol car stopped and parked directly in front of her home. Two officers, courteous but formal, approached. "Ma'am, we received a call regarding a disturbance," one of them stated. "Reports of loud arguing." She blinked. "I reside alone. Are there any visitors this evening?" "No. You are welcome to verify." They did not enter, but they recorded a few observations and then departed. 15 minutes elapsed before she observed Douglas Varnell once more. Identical khaki shorts, same gait. He did not approach the door this time, merely stood close to his mailbox, engaged in conversation with a woman in yoga pants. Both glanced towards her. Rachel opened her front door and stepped outside, signaling that she was aware of their presence. Douglas nodded once. "Just checking to ensure everything is all right over there," he called out. "I'm all right," she responded. "Good, the police visit when things don't conform to the regulations. Noise complaints, misuse of property. I pay the same fees as everyone else," she stated calmly. He raised his eyebrows, seeming to consider that a provocation, and then returned to his messaging. Later that week, the trash collection bypassed her house completely. While every other container on the street was serviced by sunrise, hers remained uncollected. She contacted the sanitation department. There was no record of a missed pickup request, they stated. "This might seem unusual," she commented, "but is it possible someone reported my house as vacant?" The woman speaking on the phone hesitated briefly. "Indeed, yes. That's what appears in the notes." Rachel took a slow, deliberate breath. "I reside here. We will resolve this." She ended the call and returned to her porch, holding her phone, the camera light blinking gently above. That evening, her back fence gate was discovered slightly open. Not fully, but enough to indicate someone had attempted to open it. The lock still engaged when she tested it, but the chain showed a new abrasion, as if it had been pulled. This was sufficient for her. She accessed the encrypted tablet she kept in a locked drawer in her home office and started a low-level alert. Possible harassment escalation. Passive monitoring began. Authorization to activate detail. Moments later, a reply. Authorization approved. Detail shifting from secondary to active. Karina Bell had lived 2 doors down for years. She was a retired postal worker who enjoyed begonias and frequently discussed her knees, seemingly avoiding conversations about politics. However, the residents of Briar Hollow Court were unaware that Karina had previously worked in logistics within international security, a confidential role originating from Langley many years prior. She was indebted to Rachel, a significant debt. That favor had now been requested. The following morning, Karina arrived at Rachel's door, presenting a basket of muffins and a quiet smile. She mentioned she thought you might appreciate some company, Rachel said. Rachel agreed and moved out of the way. "I'm assuming you're not simply visiting?" Karina asked, drawing closer. "I'm already diverting 2 drones away from your land. The homeowners association isn't your sole concern." Before Rachel could inquire about her meaning, a knock sounded at the door. And this time, it wasn't Karina with baked goods. It was 4:42 p.m. when they arrived, not in a squad car, not in a designated homeowners association vehicle. A silver sedan, notable for a cracked front headlight and excessively tinted windows, pulled up. Two men exited the vehicle. They wore khaki pants and tucked-in polo shirts, each with laminated badges attached to their belts, badges that appeared cheaply made. One held a clipboard. The other feigned taking photographs of her yard with a phone. Rachel recognized this pattern. She had witnessed similar encounters previously, not in the suburbs, but in Havana, in Berlin, and in Port-au-Prince. The imposter, the bullying tactic, the unauthorized figure who falters when challenged. She unlocked her door before they even reached it. Karina remained inside, seated peacefully on the living room couch, enjoying tea as if it were a typical Wednesday. "You must be Miss Carrington, the one with the clipboard," she stated, her tone dripping with false sweetness and a sense of superiority. "We're with the Briar Hollow HOA Enforcement Committee. We have a few items to discuss with you." Rachel rested against the doorframe. "Your badges are not scanning. You are not listed in the directory, and the HOA does not conduct in-person visits without a 72-hour notice." The man blinked, surprised she didn't react. "Ma'am," he said, adjusting his tone, "your porch has items that are not permitted, and we're receiving multiple complaints regarding frequent visitors." "Is that against the rules?" she asked, remaining still. The second man advanced. "We require you to step outside. We want to review the violations with you." "No, thank you." The first man's smile disappeared. "We're simply attempting to assist you in preventing fines. This situation could worsen." "I find that unlikely." They shared a glance. Then the expression changed. Without speaking, they moved quickly. One attempted to grasp her arm. The other reached for the screen door. Karina reacted before they made contact. "Back away," she stated firmly, moving with a skill unexpected of a retiree. Her phone was already in her hand, her thumb activating a sequence other than calling 911. "Who the hell are you?" one of the men demanded. "Back up," Karina said. The man pulled the door open forcefully. Rachel remained still. She didn't cry out. She didn't retaliate. She turned a little and pressed her hand down firmly on his wrist, securing her grip with her thumb tucked in and her elbow bent. It was a precise maneuver learned from her training. The man swore, taking a step back. "Enough," Rachel said softly. They weren't prepared for that. The second man recovered quickly. He moved forward again, but the sound of tires on gravel caused all three to stop. Two dark SUVs entered the street. There were no sirens, no lights, and no identifying markings, only a calm, consistent approach. The men glanced back, attempting to assess the situation. "You can run," Rachel stated, "but it will be more difficult." The men remained still. One appeared to be breathing heavily, while the other attempted to appear composed. Shortly after, both SUVs stopped. Four people emerged, two from each vehicle, dressed in ordinary clothing and wearing sunglasses, with no visible weapons. They proceeded together, swiftly and effectively. The individual holding the phone attempted to flee. He managed 6 feet before being restrained, with his arm twisted behind his back and his phone sliding across the pavement. The person with the clipboard made no attempt to resist. He simply sat down on the porch step, as if his confidence had been abruptly removed. One of the agents, a slender man with graying hair, addressed Rachel. "Miss Carrington, are you all right?" She affirmed her well-being. Minimal physical contact. No injuries were sustained. The camera recorded the entire incident. "Excellent," he stated, then turned to Karina. Karina shrugged, acknowledging the notification. The timing felt correct. Within 10 minutes, the two individuals posing as law enforcement officers were secured, their identities confirmed, and they were positioned on the curb, resembling reprimanded children. Residents started observing from behind curtains. Several opened garage doors and lingered in the darkness, feigning sweeping activities. No one intervened. Even Douglas Varnell, the taller of the two men, now in handcuffs, finally spoke. "We were just trying to make sure the neighborhood stayed safe." "From what?" Rachel inquired. He remained silent, but his eyes' movement towards the Douglas Varnell house indicated his intentions clearly. The other man's gaze directed at Douglas Varnell's house was observed. It wasn't missed by Rachel. It wasn't missed by the agents. It wasn't even missed by Karina, who now stood quietly beside the porch steps, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the street as if observing a chessboard illuminate. An agent, a woman in her late 30s with a distinct New Jersey accent, overheard the interaction. She gave a single nod to her colleague and walked along the sidewalk towards Douglas's front door. He did not respond to the knock. Shortly after, the agent requested a second team. There were no sirens, only unmarked vehicles as previously. It was a display of clean, cold, silent efficiency. By this time, several more neighbors had emerged, remaining close to mailboxes and speaking quietly among themselves. None of them moved closer to the house. Rachel remained seated on her porch, still and observant, watching the events transpire. Karina stood beside her, a hand gently touching the porch rail. He never was that bright, Karina murmured. You know him? Rachel inquired. Not personally, but I've been observing his cameras for weeks. Rachel lifted an eyebrow. The ones he stated were for wildlife? Yes. It was peculiar how the wildlife seemed to resemble women walking their dogs or brown children on bicycles. The clipboard guy was escorted into one of the SUVs. The other individual, identified as Ronan Kessler, had a sealed juvenile record and resided just outside city limits. Both were hired laborers, not residents. However, their paychecks provided a lead. One of the agents returned to the porch, crouching to Rachel's eye level. We are currently reviewing surveillance footage. Your neighbor across the street has cameras. We are obtaining access through municipal override. The agent paused. Do you think he is connected? I believe whoever is orchestrating this considered you an easy target. Rachel gazed across the street. Douglas's front window blinds were now closed completely. You're going to find this surprising, the agent stated. Situations like this, they occur more frequently than one might assume. Fabricated HOAs, independent residents, private contractors, all operating discreetly. However, they selected the incorrect address this time. Karina quietly laughed. Absolutely. An hour elapsed, and the federal agents possessed sufficient evidence to knock on Douglas's door. This time he responded. Rachel didn't hear everything that was said, but she observed his expression when he understood this extended beyond a local matter. He was questioned about payments routed through a shell company, the number of anonymous police calls he had recorded from his residence, the fabricated notices, and the bogus HOA violations. He attempted to dismiss the inquiries. He supposedly stated, just doing my part to keep things orderly. However, order wasn't the core issue. The problem wasn't about porch decorations or SUVs. The difficulty arose because someone such as Rachel Carrington, given her measured actions and unwavering composure, undermined the sense of authority some residents valued in areas like this. They were unaccustomed to someone who didn't require their validation. Now, each of their methods had been recorded, the timing noted, and data compared. Returning to the porch, Karina moved nearer. Are you all right? I'm fine, Rachel replied. But I'm weary of this routine. Karina offered a slight smile. Perhaps a rewrite is in order. By evening, news had circulated. 2 arrests were made, a federal investigation commenced, and a request for voluntary interviews was sent to several homeowners on the block. Remarkably, no one questioned how Rachel had reacted so swiftly or why tactical agents had arrived in less than 10 minutes. They were unaware of the agency clearance, the debt of gratitude, or the discreet surveillance that had been ongoing for the past 5 weeks. Most importantly, they didn't realize who they were confronting as what seemed like a simple removal became a public event. Now, it was impossible to ignore what lay hidden just below the surface. By the next morning, the neighborhood felt shaken. It was evident in the closed garage doors, in the disrupted routines of morning walkers, and even the talkative couple on the corner remained silent. The normal pace was broken, and everyone understood the reason. Rachel was on her porch once more, holding coffee and with one leg crossed. There was no music, no book, only observation. She had experienced observation previously, in locations where a smile directed at the incorrect individual could result in detention. However, here in Roseville, the interactions followed a subtle understanding. Neighborhood expectations, community principles, safety anxieties, harassment disguised in a cardigan. Karina approached mid-morning, a file held beneath her arm. She remained silent until she was seated. They were digging deeper than I thought, she said. We caught 3 more devices near your yard, hidden in sprinkler heads. Rachel blinked. They planted audio? Worse, motion sensors, thermal reads. Somebody was building a case for something, or pretending to, from across the street. Another neighbor, an older woman named Leanne Price, peered through her curtains. This time, she didn't flinch when their eyes met. She was the one who called the cops on you. Twice, Rachel said quietly. Karina refrained from questioning how he possessed that information. Later that afternoon, a federal vehicle made a return visit, this time carrying official documents, subpoenas. The investigation had broadened. An examination of Douglas Varnell's finances uncovered a series of payments directed to private neighborhood enforcement agents working through a business named Civic Harmony Consultants, LLC. Their actions extended beyond simply fabricating HOA credentials. They were components of a loosely structured system designed to instill intimidation. This operation wasn't recent, nor was it particularly well concealed. The matter simply hadn't faced scrutiny before. Until now. Now, with a formal federal document involved, it was receiving serious consideration. A representative from the HOA board arrived later that day, appearing distressed. A quiet woman, Marisol Dupree, holding a notepad and offering apologies frequently. We weren't aware, Miss Carrington, she said. Douglas managed all enforcement concerns. We hadn't authorized any personal visits. He informed me you had, Rachel said. Marisol averted her gaze. I am truly sorry. Please don't apologize. Rachel emphasized the need for transparency, stating, let people know what happened. We will. Before Marisol departed, she hesitated at the foot of the porch steps. If it means anything, we're grateful you didn't retaliate, that you remained calm. Rachel responded, I didn't remain calm. I remained prepared. News of the incident spread beyond the cul-de-sac. By the weekend, a local news van arrived. The reporter did not make contact, simply filming discreetly from a distance until federal agents requested they depart. The incident was already gaining traction online. A recording from a neighbor's Ring camera captured a portion of the confrontation, including the fake HOA badge, the shouting, and the takedown. When the clip appeared on social media, it ignited widespread anger. This wasn't solely due to what occurred with Rachel, but also because the situation resonated with many. Messages flooded in from across the country. One person shared, "This happened to my dad in Austin." Another recounted a similar experience in Phoenix, noting that the police sided with the HOA. The pattern of individuals wielding rules as a tool, it's a genuine problem. The streets of Roseville became a subject of discussion, not due to their well-maintained lawns or excellent school ratings, but because of what occurs when private power believes it can operate without accountability. Later that night, Karina brought over 2 glasses of wine. The sun had set. The porch light hummed gently above them. You thinking about moving? She asked. No, Rachel said. Not yet. Karina nodded. Good, because it's different now. They know someone's observing from a distance, but the significant change wasn't among the neighbors. The realization dawned on Rachel. She understood how silence allowed them to operate and how a carefully chosen reply could effectively halt that activity. 2 days elapsed before a discreet meeting occurred at an unremarkable building close to the Sacramento Municipal Complex. There was no media coverage, no sensational announcements. Simply a table, 4 chairs, and 3 individuals who possessed a true understanding of how things functioned. Rachel was positioned at the far end, wearing all black and with a manila folder placed before her. Directly facing her was Agent Colin Braddock, the lead investigator for the now-active federal inquiry into Civic Harmony Consultants. A DHS cybersecurity representative sat to his left, their expression unreadable. Karina was positioned on Rachel's right, maintaining her usual composure. What you're dealing with, Braddock began, extends beyond this HOA, or even this neighborhood. The group you identified? They have been operating in clusters across several western states. Rachel acknowledged this with a nod. They exploit delayed accountability, focusing on local homeowners associations, retirement communities, and gated suburbs. Braddock indicated a tablet. They create a facade of authority, use regulations as weapons, and target individuals who don't conform, typically those with out-of-state license plates or who appear different, particularly if they move in without drawing attention. They went beyond establishing a false authority, Karina stated. They were collecting information. The DHS representative looked up. Your residence had passive thermal tags. That is not homeowners association technology. It's surplus military-grade equipment. Braddock leaned forward. Here's the part you're likely to find concerning. He indicated a flag communication from 6 months ago. One of our side channels detected it, but it wasn't initially prioritized. He slid the document across the table, a printout of an encrypted email chain with the subject line, New resident, confirmed background, CIA link. Rachel read it silently. Someone was investigating me before I even closed escrow. We believe so, Braddock stated. While they weren't entirely sure of your identity, their discomfort was evident, and the harassment began swiftly. It was a probing of limits. And if I had strongly opposed it, she mentioned they would portray me as the instigator. He confirmed this. It's a recognizable sequence. They instigate reactions, then amplify the pressure. They deliberately accumulate records to suggest instability. Karina added, they've underestimated this individual. Braddock offered a knowing smile. That's the consensus we've been receiving. This extended beyond individual grievances it always had. The situation Rachel encountered wasn't a simple dispute between neighbors. It was interwoven within a broader structure that relied on unspoken agreements. Following the meeting, as they headed to the car, Karina questioned the outcome. Do you believe this will hold now? With the charges and the exposure? Rachel responded, they'll suppress some of it, shielding the homeowners. Details will be concealed. But someone is observing now. It's no longer hidden. That evening, back at home, she retrieved a long untouched, dusty photo album from her bedroom closet. The album contained pictures from past projects, some with unclear faces, and others cut from international newspapers. Among them was a faded photograph of her mother standing in front of their house in Paterson, New Jersey, during the time a neighbor attempted to initiate eviction proceedings due to a zoning issue. She had resisted, steadfastly, and ultimately prevailed. That determination persisted. As dusk settled, Rachel stepped onto her porch once more. This time, she wasn't alone. Several neighbors, those who had previously avoided her, were walking dogs, watering plants, and acting as if they didn't notice her. A man across the street offered a small wave. She made no response. Not yet. She settled, crossed her arms, and gazed out at the cul-de-sac she now perceived distinctly. Not as a haven, but as a reflection. I used to think I could simply buy peace, she said aloud. Karina, having returned, responded while looking at her phone. You still can. It simply costs more than many anticipate. They remained in silence for a considerable time. Within the building, the cameras continued to record events. This wasn't due to an expectation of further incidents, but because detailed records were now essential for safety. Although the immediate danger seemed to have subsided, Rachel understood that the situation wasn't resolved. True success wasn't achieved through a single apprehension or a single exposure. It was about refusing to allow herself to diminish. A week later, the neighborhood had resumed its familiar routine. Lawn services were operating again, and children were riding their bikes. However, a palpable sense of caution lingered, particularly near the Carrington house. Some people offered waves, others deliberately avoided looking. A few seemed to desire an apology, but lacked the words to express it. Rachel didn't wait for them to decide what to do. Each morning, she worked from her home office. Her evenings were spent tending to the garden, which she had neglected since moving to Meadow Creek. She began walking around the neighborhood again, not out of obligation, but because she was able. Influence wasn't solely about defense. It was about existing openly without needing authorization. Karina arrived one evening, carrying a folded lawn chair and a chilled bottle of mineral water. I thought I'd keep you company, she said. They sat quietly for a while, observing the sky transform into a gentle orange hue. "I've been thinking," Karina stated. "Why do you think they were so bold? I mean, they didn't know who you were. But still, they didn't need to know." Rachel responded. "They just assumed I wouldn't fight back." Karina nodded. "Because most people don't. Because most people can't." They paused, letting the observation linger. It was an accurate assessment. Not everyone has a federal contact on speed dial. Not everyone has decades of tactical training. Not everyone has a Corina 2 doors down. And that's the point. The situation in Roseville extended beyond mere bias or intimidation. It involved a framework that facilitated individuals acting as gatekeepers, cloaking themselves in manufactured authority, fabricated concern, and deceptive neighborly gestures. They had established a functioning system. This system persisted until someone disrupted the established pattern. Afterward that evening, Rachel composed a letter at her desk. The letter was not addressed to the HOA, nor to her neighbors, but to a young woman she had yet to meet, someone who would eventually confront a similar circumstance. She wrote, "Don't wait for permission to have space. Claim it, subtly if possible, forcefully if necessary. Expect resistance. But remember, they consistently underestimate what they don't comprehend. Retain records, maintain composure, and most importantly, remain present, even when they desire your absence." She folded the paper, placed it within a journal, and slid it onto a shelf beside her badge. Not an award, not a recollection, a prompt, because this extended beyond a porch or a fence or a neighborhood rulebook. The narrative explored the lengths individuals would take to safeguard their perceived reality, and how swiftly that perception crumbled when someone asserted themselves and resisted conformity. The following Sunday, a community announcement circulated detailing a town hall meeting intended to rebuild faith and openness regarding neighborhood regulations. Douglas Varnell's name was discreetly eliminated from all HOA documentation. There was no formal justification provided. Rachel wasn't invited. However, she attended regardless. She positioned herself in the back row, remained silent, and simply listened, not to the spoken words. Regarding the atmosphere, however, the hesitant coughs, the measured language, the alteration in stance upon noticing her presence. Later, as she departed, Leanne Price approached her. "I wasn't aware the situation escalated to that degree," she remarked, adjusting her handbag strap. "We simply sensed something was amiss." "What was amiss?" Rachel inquired. Leanne paused. "I suppose I hadn't anticipated you would be so ready. I didn't anticipate needing to be." They remained there briefly. Then Leanne gave a short nod and walked off. This wasn't reconciliation, but it signaled the beginning of a reckoning. That night, Rachel posted a single sentence on her infrequently used social media account. "Politeness won't save you, but preparedness might." It quickly became widespread within days. People were no longer simply observing the drama. They were recognizing the underlying pattern, and perhaps, just perhaps, understanding it was time to disrupt it. So if you've reached this point, keep this in mind. Resilience isn't always about direct action. It can be found in a chair on a porch. It can be seen in a camera angled perfectly. It can be heard in a voice that remains strong. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe. Someone else out there needs to experience it as well. Darius Whitfield arrived in a tailored suit, prepared to lead a major tech summit. However, hotel staff requested he wait outside. What followed had a significant impact on the entire company. It was just before 8 a.m. when Darius Whitfield exited his black Lincoln Continental onto the hotel's circular driveway in downtown San Jose. He adjusted the cuff of his navy blue suit jacket, the tailored fabric reflecting the morning light. He was impeccably dressed, with sharp lines, a crisp shirt, and Italian leather shoes. He exuded purpose and meticulousness, yet the valet remained still, not taking a single step. Darius held his keys casually in one hand and briefly looked over. The young man averted his gaze, feigning a check of his phone, then turned to the car behind Darius. "Hey, can you park this one?" the valet asked his coworker, gesturing past Darius without acknowledging him. Darius observed the glass doors of the hotel. They lacked prominent signage, No red carpet, just clean glass and a tranquil foyer. There was nothing to indicate what would happen within those walls. He retrieved his keys, parked his car himself, and walked across the drive. Upon opening the front door, he observed a slight change in the concierge's smile. It disappeared as quickly as it appeared. "Can I help you?" The woman at the front desk inquired without looking up. "Yes," Darius replied. "I'm here for the SummitNet conference. I believe you have a redwood room reserved for us." The woman quickly examined his face, frowned, and then looked back at her screen. "Do you work for one of the vendors?" she asked. "No, I'm the CEO." She blinked. "Right. Could you wait outside for a moment? We're still prepping the space." He paused. "I'm also the keynote speaker." There was no apology, no moment of realization. Just a tight smile and a firm response. "Still, we're not quite ready. Please wait outside." A colleague, a young man wearing a blazer and with a walkie-talkie attached to his belt, emerged behind her. He scrutinized Darius from head to toe, as if verifying his credentials. "Are you with security?" he inquired, speaking quietly. "I am Darius Whitfield." Darius responded calmly. "The conference you're holding today? I manage it." A brief pause. The man then angled his head towards the entrance. "Please wait a moment, sir. We will find someone to escort you." Darius exhaled slowly and deliberately. Attendees began to gather. Several initial investors were among the first to arrive. A white man wearing a gray plaid suit was immediately met with handshakes and friendly expressions. He wasn't asked to wait in the lobby. Darius noticed him, but the man seemed to hardly acknowledge him and proceeded through the lobby, accompanied by the same staff who had previously requested Darius to wait outside. The hotel doors closed behind him with a quiet hiss. Darius now stood again just outside the main entrance on the pavement. He glanced at his watch. The time read 8:09. His presentation wasn't scheduled for another 51 minutes. He possessed time. However, an unsettling sensation stirred within him. It wasn't anger, it was something more profound. Across the street, a mother guided a stroller toward the coffee shop. A bus emitted a hiss as it halted at the corner. Life continued its course, and yet Darius remained stationary. A mature man who had established a company from its foundation, feeling as though he was an outsider due to his appearance not aligning with preconceived notions. His phone vibrated in his pocket. "Boss," the voice of his assistant, Jalen, spoke. "Just checking. Did they greet you yet?" Darius stared at the hotel doors, his tone calm. "Not exactly. But that's when something shifted. Not in them, but in him." Jalen was still on the line, his voice low but alert. "What do you mean, not exactly?" Darius replied. "They asked me to wait outside." There was a pause, not shock, not disbelief, just silence. Jalen knew from his time working with Darius that his measured, toneless speech indicated more than just a report. He was analyzing and organizing the information. "Wanting to come down?" Jalen inquired. "No, Darius replied. Stay with the investors. They'll be arriving within the next 15 minutes. Let me manage this." He ended the call, adjusted his tie, and returned through the doors. Inside, the same woman at the front desk noticed him, but her expression remained unchanged. "I believe I requested you wait outside, sir," she stated, inputting information on the keyboard. "And I did wait," Darius said directly. "Now, I wish to speak with the event coordinator. My name is Darius Whitfield. I am the founder and CEO of Whitfield Dynamics. We reserve the Redwood Room and 2 floors of your suites for this conference." This time, she made direct eye contact with him. However, there was no apology offered, just a brief hesitation, as if she was assessing whether this was a joke. "Mr. Whitmore, was it?" "Whitfield." A pause. She turned to the young man in the blazer. "Can you call Gina from events?" The man nodded and walked off. Simultaneously, a bellhop wheeled by with a luggage cart stacked with briefcases. Darius stepped aside and caught a glimpse of 2 of his board members stepping out of the elevator, each with branded SummitNet conference badges clipped to their suits. They greeted a hotel manager who seemed to have appeared suddenly to shake their hands. Darius subtly raised a hand, seeking acknowledgement. The manager briefly looked at him, paused, and then looked away. "Ma'am," Darius stated calmly, refocusing on the front desk. "Let me repeat this. I'm not a guest. I'm not affiliated with security. I'm not making a delivery. I'm the cause of these people being here. I orchestrated this entire summit. I brought 60 of the most influential investors in West Coast tech into this building today. The woman began to speak, but the man holding the walkie-talkie returned before she could utter a word. She's on her way, he announced. Following a brief silence, he inquired, "You're really the CEO?" Darius offered a subtle smile. "I didn't just build this company, I financed it. I wrote the first line of code. I signed a contract with this hotel. And I chose this location because I believed in the idea of professional courtesy." Both individuals looked at him. He continued, "I've got $5 billion under management. I was nearly ready to believe you could assist with that." The ensuing quiet felt unusual. It wasn't a reaction of doubt. It was awkwardness. The woman at the reception desk moved, appearing hesitant. Before she could respond, Gina from events entered the lobby quickly, carrying a folder and already speaking. "Mr. Whitfield, I sincerely apologize for the delay. We weren't notified of your arrival. Please come with me. The Redwood Room is prepared, and coffee is being served. The investors are already assembling." The same staff who had requested he step outside now retreated, as if dividing water. Darius followed Gina past the desk, past the man with the walkie-talkie, and past the woman whose face was flushed now. Whether from embarrassment or an unknown reason, he remained silent. Explanation was unnecessary, because their misunderstanding wasn't a man attempting to enter a place where he wasn't welcome. What they overlooked, what they were unwilling to acknowledge, was a man who held ownership of the space. Remaining silent, allowing them the opportunity to adjust their actions, they did not. However, what followed would not be a demonstration of anger. Instead, it would serve as a lesson in remembrance, and Darius possessed a remarkable memory. The Redwood Room was located at the rear of the hotel's conference wing, beyond a hallway adorned with abstract artwork and subdued carpeting. Within, the lighting had been lowered in preparation for the initial presentation. Chairs were arranged in rows, a podium displayed the Summit Net logo, and a side table held bottled water and elegant name placards. Darius quickly surveyed the room. Jalen was positioned at the front, adjusting sound levels with the AV technician. Investors were arriving, engaging in hushed conversations over coffee. Unbeknownst to everyone, something had occurred in the lobby. He didn't proceed to the podium, not yet. Instead, he entered a side room, the private lounge reserved for speakers, and shut the door. He then retrieved his phone. "Tammy," he exclaimed as his head of operations answered. "We're moving the summit." There was no surprise audible on the other end. Tammy was accustomed to this manner of communication. "Today?" she inquired. "Right now," he replied. "You want to relocate 50 people with less than an hour's notice?" "Not want. Need," he corrected. She refrained from questioning further. "You want me to call the Fairmont or the Hayes?" "Hayes," he stated. "I want every investor redirected there. Make sure they understand this isn't a scheduling issue. It's a matter of principle. I will provide further details when appropriate. Please cancel the remainder of our reservation at Willow Creek Manor. Suites were included. If there's resistance to releasing the booking, please charge any associated penalties to me directly." Tammy released a slow breath. "Acknowledged. Contact Jalen as well. Instruct him to postpone the opening and redirect the guests." Subsequently, Darius concluded the call. There was no raised voices, no abrupt phone placement, only decisive action, efficient and straightforward. He observed his image reflected in the lounge's dark glass window. He felt neither justified nor triumphant. He simply felt weary. Weary of entering spaces where people perceived everything about him except his true self. A gentle knock sounded. It was Jalen. "Shall we review the slides?" Darius declined. "Plans have changed." Jalen looked surprised. "Are we departing?" "I'm already handling it." It took a moment, but then Jalen understood. They hadn't attempted to rectify the situation, had they? "No. Should I inform the board?" "I'm taking care of it directly. Please ensure the guests proceed." No one was to acknowledge the hotel on departure. Within minutes, Jalen was discreetly communicating the situation through subtle handshakes and nods. "Emergency relocation," he murmured to one group. We've got a superior setup just a few blocks over, he informed another. Mr. Whitfield will provide details. Simultaneously, Tammy was contacting the Hayes, securing their backup venue, arranging staff, transferring AV equipment, and lunch catering. Darius revisited the Redwood room a single time, returning to retrieve his notes and laptop. A hotel manager then emerged, his expression strained, holding a folder. Mr. Whitfield, I'm informed there was an error at the front desk earlier today, and I want to offer a personal apology. It was never our aim to cause offense. Darius interjected smoothly. You simply demonstrated a lack of standards. This isn't a matter of pride. It's about expectations. The manager appeared taken aback. Is there a way we can rectify this? Darius closed his laptop case and looked at him. You had your chance. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The only thing louder than outrage is absence. The room, moments earlier filled with leading investors, was emptying quickly. As Darius left through the same lobby where he's been instructed to wait, he noticed the desk clerk watching him, her lips pressed tightly. The young man with the walkie-talkie had disappeared. He continued walking. A black SUV was waiting outside. The driver opened the door. Darius got in, his phone already ringing. However, this wasn't the conclusion of the day's events. It was merely the point at which others began to arrive. When the first tray of croissants reached the now half-empty Redwood room, most of the guests had already departed, assembling in the grand atrium of the Hayes, San Jose's other luxury hotel. The staff at that location required no introduction to Darius. The reception gave him a welcome as if they had anticipated this for weeks. Simultaneously, at the initial hotel, the front desk staff appeared perplexed. The receptionist repeatedly examined her screen, reviewing the guest list and then the room blocks. A puzzled expression crossed her face as she reached for the phone. Gina, she said, the conference guests are departing. Gina, the events coordinator, was in the loading bay assisting the AV team in packing up equipment. What do you mean leaving? She inquired. I mean guests are checking out. Access was being revoked. Several individuals simply departed without comment. Within fewer than 20 minutes, the lobby, previously bustling with greetings and business cards, showed noticeable absences. Conference signs remained in place, but the atmosphere dissipated quickly. Then the manager received a phone call. Sir, the company has terminated all reservations. He appeared stunned. That's impossible. It's summit day. But it was, in fact, possible. The situation unfolded rapidly. Calls began pouring in. The front desk clerk appeared panicked, attempting to get the manager's attention while also handling a call from housekeeping. A guest had just departed without notification, according to reports. Another client stated they would not be paying for today's brunch. Refer them to Mr. Whitfield, someone else added. A security guard then approached the manager. That SUV outside, it transported him and several others. They're no longer present. The shift felt like a chain reaction, with one problem triggering another. Without any outbursts or blame, there was simply a disappearance. At the Hayes, Darius addressed the group, standing before a large projection screen in a bright conference room. He spoke deliberately and plainly, showing no indication of resentment. Before we start, I'd like to express my gratitude for your adaptability. I understand the change of location was unforeseen, but I think the place we meet reflects what we prioritize. A quiet acknowledgement rippled through the room. I selected that previous hotel due to its reputation, the quality of its service, and its convenient location near your offices. However, this morning, I was reminded that a refined lobby and a 5-star rating do not ensure courtesy. He paused. I was requested to wait outside, twice, by staff who did not once inquire about my name. I parked my own vehicle. I reintroduced myself. I clarified my identity. Yet in that environment, none of it seemed significant. A few expressions grew strained. Heads shook. Some of you may be surprised by this. Others, perhaps not. He paused briefly. However, I don't endorse raising voices. I don't endorse diminishing others simply to demonstrate a point. I endorse progress. And today, we are making progress. To a location that acknowledges us, listens to us, and handles our business with the appropriate level of importance. The audience responded with applause, motivated by esteem, not sympathy. In the rear, Jalen observed, arms crossed, exhibiting pride. Simultaneously, at the initial hotel, the conference signage was being removed. Maintenance personnel removed untouched coffee urns. A catering team remained still, observing the scene and uncertain whether to start preparing the food. The manager examined a document he held. It was a formal notification from Whitfield Dynamics, ending their agreement, effective immediately. There would be no legal action or demands, only a straightforward severance payment and a significant financial cost. He contacted the general manager. "We're out of the event," he stated. "How?" the general manager asked. The unidentified guest was the event itself. While the hotel attempted to address what it had overlooked, Darius was poised to reveal a previously unknown aspect of his own history. The day progressed into the late afternoon. The sun cast long shadows across the street as Darius sat in the back seat of the SUV, his suit jacket folded neatly beside him. He had removed his tie, revealing the open collar of a white shirt, and a weary expression filled his eyes. Jalen sat beside him, reviewing emails on his tablet. "Are you certain you don't want me to draft a public statement?" Jalen inquired. "People are already beginning to post. Someone from Marlowe and Banks recorded a video of you exiting." Darius declined. "Let them speak. I am not trying to become popular online." He reclined against the seat. The engine emitted a low hum. Outside, children cycled along the sidewalk, their laughter echoing. A woman wearing a red jacket assisted an elderly gentleman from a rideshare and into a small dental office. It was unremarkable, simply the day proceeding as usual. A sense of heaviness filled the car. "Can I ask you something?" Jalen asked, without lifting his gaze. "Go ahead. Why didn't you just confront them?" He continued. "They deserved it, considering everything." Darius hesitated before responding, his gaze fixed on the window. Finally, he said, "When I was 19, I attended my first interview with a resume detailing summer jobs and a GPA that promised opportunity. The receptionist inquired if I was delivering food. I smiled, confirmed that I wasn't, and waited 2 hours. The interview was never scheduled. It was an oversight. I was present and observed." Jalen looked around, remaining silent. "I had the option to create a disturbance, to draw attention, but I chose not to. I departed, seeking alternative exits, finding another, and then another." He moved his hands together, as though recalling the sensation of a steering wheel from years ago. "For a significant portion of my life, I believe that achieving certain milestones, accumulating degrees, wealth, and professional attire, would dispel certain preconceptions." He glanced towards Jalen. Jalen nodded slowly. It wasn't simply another receptionist. It was a complete hotel, a defining moment. "Exactly," Darius affirmed. "That's why I left. Because I didn't need to prove anything. I didn't require them to understand. I needed the observers to witness what it appears like when you decline to plead for respect that you have already earned." He exhaled, looking out the window again. "My father used to say, you can't force people to see you, but you can choose where you won't be invisible." Jalen relaxed against the seat, allowing the thought to linger. The vehicle paused at a traffic signal. Directly ahead, a billboard displayed an advertisement for a startup accelerator. It featured youthful faces, modern logos, and vibrant colors. Jalen smiled. "You ever imagine we would be the ones leading those programs, rather than seeking acceptance into them?" Darius chuckled. "Every day, and it still feels unreal occasionally." The SUV came to a halt before the Whitfield Dynamics building, a structure of glass, steel, and understated confidence. Upon exiting, the lobby receptionist waved, already summoning the elevator. During the ascent, Jalen initiated conversation. "Have you ever considered sharing that story?" he asked. "The 19-year-old version?" Darius replied, "Perhaps. Not seeking sympathy, but for clarity, because people often assume these incidents are isolated events. A single bad day, a single impolite employee. However, it's rarely about a solitary moment. It's about recurring patterns, repeated, honed, and concealed." He disembarked the elevator, briefcase in his grasp. "Addressing problems requires acknowledgement, but it's also possible to demonstrate how to disengage with grace. What Darius didn't understand was that his actions, his silent resistance, were quickly gaining wider attention. The consequences began subtly. They didn't appear in news reports. There was no public condemnation. Instead, there were hushed conversations in meeting rooms. Then, a few emails circulated. By midweek, 3 other companies had discreetly canceled their reservations at the same hotel. There were no official declarations. No demonstrations. We're shifting our strategy. However, the discussions were very specific. Are you aware of what occurred with the Whitfield Dynamics team? We cannot accept that level of risk associated with our reputation. Could you remind me of the alternative venue? The hotel attempted to repair the situation. A regional sales director contacted Whitfield Dynamics, proposing complimentary bookings for the upcoming quarter, complimentary executive suites, and even spa credits for visiting investors. The proposal was not approved. Tammy reviewed it, then closed and marked the email as resolved. Darius did not respond, as trust, once broken, cannot be restored with price reductions. This wasn't a matter of incorrect charges. It concerned the events permitted under supervision. Simultaneously, news of the relocation reached media outlets. A technology news source reported on the sequence of events. It was not a critical piece, but rather a recounting of the timeline, the events, the individuals who witnessed them, and the change in location. A quiet, thoughtful pause followed. However, the narrative circulated through email accounts, then in messaging apps, and ultimately during after-work gatherings where young Black professionals toasted Darius Whitfield. Not for his response, but for his restraint. Because occasionally, the most impactful action isn't a forceful reaction. It's disengaging, as if the situation wasn't worthy of your presence. The Whitfield Dynamics office was silent as Darius presided over a boardroom meeting. He sat at the head of the table, accompanied by 4 senior staff members and 3 partners from a private equity group based in Seattle. An investor spoke, commenting, "We've heard about the switch. People are still discussing it." Darius shifted back a little. "Is that a concern for you?" inquired one of the investors. "Not at all," the man replied. "It actually conveyed more about your leadership style than the slide deck ever did," another investor added. Few possess that level of composure when facing intense situations. That's the basis of trust. Darius offered a subtle acknowledgement, refraining from any display of triumph. The focus wasn't about victory. It was about adhering to fair practices from the outset. Later that evening, he walked the quiet floor of the office, pausing to observe a whiteboard covered with written diagrams, sticky notes, and equations. Jalen was present as well, drinking from a chipped mug. "Did you review the report?" he inquired. "Yes, I did." The detail about the valet's actions was omitted, Darius noted. "They always leave something out," he said. "Doesn't matter," Jalen added. "People understand the situation. Those who needed to know received the message." Darius reviewed the whiteboard. "When we constructed this establishment, I didn't desire it to be ostentatious. I didn't want visitors to feel impressed. I wanted them to feel acknowledged. That's the key distinction," Jalen affirmed. "Do they see you now?" Darius responded softly. "They always recognized me. They simply never anticipated I would be the one authorizing the payments." He turned toward his office, extinguished the lights, and hesitated in the doorway. "Let's continue building," he stated. However, before he departed for the evening, there was one more individual Darius needed to speak with, someone who served as a reminder of the importance of moments such as this. The following morning, Darius stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, holding a newly brewed mug of black coffee. The sky appeared as a flat silver, creating a sense of quietness and distance. A gentle knock sounded at the door. "Come in," he replied without turning. The door opened. A young man entered. This was Elijah Green, in his mid-20s, intelligent but still inexperienced, a junior analyst at Whitfield Dynamics. He held a folder, seeming hesitant about the timing. "You said you wanted to meet?" Elijah inquired. Darius turned, offering a brief nod and indicating the chair opposite him. Elijah took a seat, placing the folder on his lap without opening it. His gaze shifted, suggesting uncertainty about where to start. I'm aware of what occurred at the hotel, he finally stated. Some of us were discussing it in the lunchroom yesterday. Darius remained silent, allowing the quiet to linger, not awkwardly, but calmly. I suppose I simply wanted to inquire, how do you manage to not be affected by it? Elijah asked. How do you keep your composure when it's so apparent? Darius offered a slight smile. Do you imagine I remain composed? Elijah hesitated. Didn't I? No, that he was replayed. I simply didn't reveal it. He placed his coffee down. You know what they perceived when I entered that hotel. A man present in a location they didn't anticipate. Nothing else held significance. Not the professional obligations, not the agreements, not the convention. Only their own conception of what authority embodies and who doesn't align with it. Elijah moved closer. Then why not challenge them? Why not expose them publicly? Because the world is already aware, Darius explained. That's not the core issue. The true challenge lies in demonstrating to future generations that you don't require their validation to take action. You don't need their authorization to feel like you belong, Elijah affirmed thoughtfully. You navigated the situation with composure, he commented. If it had been me, I'm unsure, Darius continued. That's the key point. You don't need certainty. You simply need to retain this understanding. Don't sacrifice your dignity because of another person's lack of understanding. If they misunderstand you, allow it. However, ensure the foundation you're establishing for yourself, your company, your name, and your team creates a sense of inclusivity for everyone. Elijah paused, the sentiment resonating more deeply than anticipated. That's the essence of leadership, Darius stated. It's not about reacting aggressively. It's about creating opportunities elsewhere. A brief silence followed. Then Darius moved closer. Now what's in here? He asked, gesturing to the folder Elijah had brought. Oh, right, Elijah responded, seeming to refocus. It's a new proposal from the behavioral data team. We're incorporating changes based on your feedback from last week. Darius opened the folder and quickly reviewed the first page. Excellent. Let's schedule a meeting with the team this afternoon. Elijah started to leave, pausing at the doorway. Thank you, he said. For what? Darius replied, for showing us how to progress. He acknowledged Elijah with a subtle nod. Elijah departed the room. Outside, traffic flowed consistently, as if the world remained oblivious to what had transpired. However, those who had observed would not easily forget. This extended beyond a single man and one hotel. It encompassed all the rooms people enter where someone perceives only a partial truth. It was about the subtle ways authority can exert itself, through initiative, not response. And it concerned altering the established order without accepting the tools offered. If this narrative resonated with you deeply, if it prompted reflection on how you navigate environments not designed for you, please discuss it. Share your thoughts. And remember to subscribe to receive more true stories demonstrating the remarkable power of quiet strength. She was simply known as the janitor. They ridiculed her for reading while she worked. Then they were stunned when she delivered the valedictorian speech at graduation, revealing everything. At Larchmont Hills Academy, everyone recognized Olivia Cranston and Camille Strathmore. It was understood. They were the daughters of families who traveled by private plane and ate at restaurants where the menus didn't list prices. Their presence in a room prompted people to either rise or avert their gaze, a reaction born of habit, fear, or envy. They weren't malicious, not precisely, but they understood early on that kindness wasn't essential. Politeness was a choice. Deference? It was reserved for individuals who could provide something in return. And for someone like Janice Albury, the reserved black woman with gentle eyes and rough hands, there was no advantage to be found. Janice had been employed at the school for nearly 2 years. Each weekday, she arrived before sunrise and departed well after the final SUV had exited the gated parking lot. She scrubbed the floors, shined the trophies in the main hall, and ensured the restrooms were fresh. She seldom spoke unless addressed, and her voice, when she did, was as tranquil as a still pond. But Camille observed something one day during lunch break. She had forgotten her phone in the chemistry lab, and hurrying back, She noticed Janice in an empty classroom, not tidying, but looking through a large biology textbook, her lips moving as if saying something softly. Camille rested against the doorframe and smiled. I didn't think you were interested in science, she said. Janice looked up. I'm just reviewing some earlier learning. Camille angled her head. Are you going to teach now, as well? Janice smiled. Not precisely. It began modestly. There were whispered comments and laughter when Janice walked by. Camille told Olivia, and the two created a playful game from it. Oh, look, Olivia whispered one morning as Janice wheeled her cart past their lunch table. Einstein with a mop, Camille chuckled. Probably writing her thesis on floor wax. They laughed a little too loudly. Other students overheard. Some laughed with them. Others avoided eye contact. No one intervened. Janice kept her head down. It was her usual practice. The students overlooked the way her eyes paused on the school crest etched into the wall, her gaze thoughtful rather than resentful. They failed to observe her tendency to listen more than to speak, or her habit of keeping a notebook in the side pocket of her cart, partially filled with notes. One person showed her kindness. Mr. Del Toro, a literature teacher from Fresno who had a fondness for those often overlooked. On one occasion, he observed Janice carefully aligning the copies of To Kill a Mockingbird on a cart just outside his classroom. You know, he remarked, most people simply stack them and proceed. Janice offered a slight shrug. That book warrants more than crooked edges, she said. He chuckled. I often say that, he stated, then paused. Have you read it? Janice responded to his question. Twice. Initially in high school, and subsequently when I was mature enough to grasp its true significance. He never requested anything further, but from that point forward he would leave a book for her on the bench outside the staff room every other Friday. No message, no inquiries. Nevertheless, the girls persisted. One afternoon, Olivia waited until Janice passed by, then whispered, I bet she sleeps in the janitor's closet. Probably dreams in Clorox. It wasn't simply impolite, it was unkind. But Janice continued walking, and that disturbed Olivia more than anything. She anticipated embarrassment or anger, or at the very least a reaction. Janice's silence, however, felt inescapable. This made her a figure to be reckoned with. The lights at Northwood High typically dimmed around 8 p.m. Most evenings, though a few always remained lit, sufficient to create long shadows across the marble corridors. It was during these hours that Janice seemed to transform. As the classrooms fell silent and the usual teenage bustle subsided, she would move her cart into the supply closet, change into a clean shirt, and bring her notebook to room 114. Room 114 was no longer designated for a specific class. It had a flickering light and one desk leg shorter than the others. Most teachers steered clear of it. However, Janice had adopted it. The door did not lock, and that was acceptable. She didn't require privacy. She simply needed space. She would retrieve her laptop, a 6-year-old Dell lacking the N key, and sign into her coursework. She was 6 credits shy of finishing a degree in educational leadership through an accelerated adult program offered by the same university that operated Larchmont Hills Academy. A small, understated provision located within the staff handbook provided full scholarships to employees who worked a minimum of 30 hours a week. Most staff members overlooked it. Janice had not. It wasn't about ambition at this point. The focus was on completing a project that had been halted years prior. This was a time when she possessed a child, a husband, and a secure job in Maryland, only to lose all 3 within 18 months. Life has a way of deflating you before you're aware you've been holding your breath. She never expressed her struggles to anyone. It wasn't a behavior she'd been taught. Occasionally, late at night, she would receive a message from her sister in Detroit. You sleeping or still playing superhero? Janice would respond with a photo of her textbook and a brief message. Chapter 6 is proving difficult. Her sister would then send a laughing emoji, followed by, you're still the smartest person I know. Don't let those stuck-up girls get to you. She never shared with her sister the full extent of the difficulties. She omitted the incident where Camille accidentally knocked over the bucket of dirty water and seemed to find amusement as Janice knelt to clean it. There was also the incident when Olivia confided in a group of parents during a school tour, suggesting the institution favored hiring individuals with charitable backgrounds. Yet, Janice persisted. She consistently arrived 5 minutes early. Her car was always spotless, her uniform immaculate. She possessed patience but lacked innocence. Her understanding of the school's customs surpassed that of the students. Beneath the refined wooden interiors and carefully selected diversity pamphlets, there existed a decay. Not everyone, naturally, but sufficiently pervasive to permeate the atmosphere. Janice had no intention of rectifying it. Her task was simple: observe, listen, and document. Unbeknownst to the students, and even the staff, Janice had been selected for a role extending beyond cleaning floors. 2 years prior, following an internal report alleging the Academy's neglect of racial and economic discrimination, the Board of Trustees approved a discreet strategy. They decided to place someone within the school, silently. Someone who wouldn't attract attention. Someone who could witness everything. While working part-time at a community college in Oakland, Janice received a job offer. The position came with no title or special privileges, simply an ID badge, a mop, and a defined purpose. That purpose was to observe, to take notes, and to document the patterns of behavior that were not able to be captured in policy memos or camera footage. The work was not glamorous. However, it was significant. And late at night, with her coursework open in one window and her field notes in another, Janice recorded everything. It wasn't only the cruelty, but the indifference, the smiles that vanished the moment someone turned away. She also wrote about the good teachers, the limited number of students who met her gaze. She recalled how Mr. Del Toro left that copy of Beloved with a sticky note that said, "For someone who understands silence." Still, each shift drained her. Not from the labor itself, but from a necessity of feigning. She bore their ignorance as a second uniform, and with each passing day, it became increasingly burdensome. A change was on the horizon, though not as they anticipated. By early spring, the students at Larchmont Hills Academy were already largely disengaged. Señoritas had arrived gradually, like a dense fog, subtle, pervasive, and self-satisfied. Olivia and Camille frequently spent their days in the senior lounge, examining college acceptance emails and making critical remarks about those they perceived as inferior. However, subtle comments were no longer sufficient. The initial excitement had faded. They desired a significant reaction. On a Monday morning, Camille entered the admin office and pretended to be worried. "I think the janitor's been stealing test copies," she whispered to the front desk clerk, making her voice sound very low. "I saw her in a classroom late at night, alone." Ms. Robbins looked surprised. "Janice, are you certain?" Camille adopted her most innocent expression. "I don't want to cause problems for anyone, but this school is supposed to be secure, isn't it?" It was a carefully planned action. If anything resulted from it, so much the better. A sense of unease lingered. That afternoon, Janice was summoned to the operations office. The interaction was presented as a standard procedure with no direct accusations. She remained composed as the facility's manager reviewed his notes, visibly ill at ease. "We simply wanted to inquire if you've been present in unoccupied classrooms during your shift," he stated. "I clean all classrooms assigned to me." Janice responded directly. "Yes, but do you remain longer? For any purpose?" He maintained eye contact. "I complete my assigned tasks. Occasionally, I require a brief respite, as do most people." He acknowledged this with a nod and made a note. "Very well, that concludes the discussion." Janice rose. "Should any questions arise regarding my work, I would welcome a straightforward discussion." The gentleman's cheeks flushed slightly. "There are no concerns. Simply, you understand procedure." It was a flimsy fabrication, and both were aware of it. Outside the office, Janice located Camille resting against the wall, feigning interest in her phone. The smile offered was not amicable. "Everything satisfactory, Miss Albury?" Her tone was saccharine. Janice remained unmoved. It was more effective than one might expect. Camille's face faltered briefly, then quickly returned to its characteristic sneer. However, this was no longer a trivial matter. Camille and Olivia had matured observing individuals evade consequences. This fostered their confidence and impulsiveness. 2 days elapsed before Olivia planned a further incident. She let a silver necklace fall near the janitor's closet and then dramatically announced its disappearance from her locker during lunch. A small crowd assembled. She raised her wrist in a theatrical gesture. "I'm certain I had it in there earlier today," she declared. "I suppose it could be lost permanently," Camille observed. Their friends chuckled, some visibly anxious. "Perhaps check the mop bucket," they joked. However, when one of the admin staff overheard the remark and volunteered to investigate, Olivia quickly recanted. "No, I'm sure I simply misplaced it. It's nothing significant," she said. The immediate concern subsided, but the awkwardness remained. That evening, Mr. Del Toro walked past Janice in the hallway. He stopped. "You're doing okay," he said. Janice looked up from her card. "You've been here long enough to know the games these kids play," he sighed. "Too long sometimes." There was a pause. "Is there anything I can do?" She thought for a moment. "Keep doing what you're doing. That's rare enough." What neither of them knew, what no one knew, was that Janice had already sent her first internal report to the board. Documented dates, quotes, and behavior patterns were observed. Names redacted for now, but she wasn't the only one being monitored anymore. An independent firm had initiated discrete audits. These audits included interviews and surveys presented as student engagement questionnaires. Camille and Olivia believed they had complete control over the school, but attention was shifting. Rumors began to change their focus. Despite this, the girls continued their actions. Cruelty had developed into a pattern, and patterns are difficult to change when they have never faced repercussions. Then, one Friday, Janice heard something that stopped her. In the lounge, behind a cracked door, Camille was speaking to a boy from the tennis team. "You know that janitor, Janice?" she said. "My mom says people like her are just here to make the place look diverse." She referred to it as optics. The boy laughed. Olivia added, "My dad said the school's bleeding money giving those scholarship perks to staff. It's basically charity," Camille scoffed. Unable to repair the situation with books, Janice stood quietly, 1 foot still in the hallway, one hand gripping the edge of her cart. She said nothing, but something within her shifted. She had been patient long enough, but now she had everything she needed, and it was almost time to show them. Before she was sweeping floors under fluorescent lights, Janice Albury had been someone else entirely. 12 years prior, she held the position of Director of Curriculum Development for a public school district in Maryland, known then as Janice Simmons. Her responsibilities included managing a corner office, overseeing 3 staff members, and proudly displaying a plaque from the state superintendent. She was married and a mother. Life at that time possessed a sense of order and comfort. However, that changed with a tragic event. Her husband Carr was struck by a delivery truck on I-83 during a snowstorm. He perished in the accident. Her daughter, Kira, who was 6 years old at the time, survived, though with significant injuries. After 2 months spent in a hospital bed, Janice faced a year of surgeries and rehabilitation. While insurance covered a significant portion of the expenses, some costs remained. Janice drew upon her savings, her retirement funds, and ultimately sold their home. Following this, Kira developed pneumonia, which tragically led to her passing. Janice resigned from her job 2 weeks following the funeral. The sight of a school brought back the image of Kira's empty chair, and the sound of children's laughter in the hallways served as a painful reminder of her loss. She moved around, taking temporary work, staying with friends, then in rented rooms, ultimately settling into a small studio apartment in Antioch, California. Despite these changes, she consistently read and continued learning. This pursuit led her to discover a program, a little-known educational equity initiative offered through a university partnership, representing a fresh opportunity. When asked if she would agree to work undercover to examine behavioral differences between students from privileged backgrounds and faculty perspectives, she readily accepted. She acted not out of financial need, but because the system had let down too many individuals resembling her. She refused to accept this inaction. Applying for the janitorial position using her maiden name, she successfully completed the background checks, keeping her degree and credentials secured in a folder at home. Initially, her goal was simply to observe and listen, to remain unnoticed. She had no plan to participate. The incidents she witnessed were disheartening. A senior teacher deriding a student with a speech impediment under the assumption of privacy. Discussions about a girl's financial aid occurred at a staff meeting, presented as a personal failing. Then there were Camille and Olivia, whose parents' substantial donations had secured the gymnasium's naming rights in honor of a hedge fund. Their self-assurance stemmed not from conceit, but from a sense of privilege. Janice felt disheartened by what she observed. Eleanor Larchmont, the school's founder, had originally conceived of the academy as a place for future leaders from all backgrounds. However, that original vision had diminished over time, obscured by financial influence, promotional efforts, and preferential admissions practices. Consequently, Janice began her work. Her notebook rapidly filled with detailed observations, specific dates, recurring linguistic patterns, staff reactions. She consistently attended faculty meetings when possible, choosing to sit in the rear of the room. She posed inquiries that prompted discomfort among those present. She took on committee assignments that others avoided. Steadily and carefully, she became the source of information the board required. And during evenings, as the halls became vacant, she studied. She wasn't simply observing, she was revitalizing herself. Each finished module advanced her progress toward that second degree. Each submitted essay felt like rediscovering a part of the woman she once was. During one evening spent reviewing a case study about institutional gatekeeping, a particular sentence caught her attention. It stated that genuine authority doesn't proclaim itself, it waits to be recognized. She emphasized this line with underlines. Graduation was approaching rapidly, just 3 weeks away. She had finished the program without drawing much attention. Her grade point average ranked her among the highest in her group. The board had previously approved her to address the audience. Camille and Olivia continued to walk through the halls with an air of confidence, unaware of what was about to unfold. The faculty, too, were on the verge of a realization that learning extends beyond the classroom. Janice had observed them for 2 years. Now, she was poised to step forward, taking the central position, and they would be completely surprised. That morning, the sky above Antioch was clear, excessively bright considering the anxiety some individuals brought into the Larchmont Hills Academy auditorium. Families occupied the seats, proud parents filled with anticipation and clutching phones, surrounded by flowers, ties, and costly perfume. The scene appeared flawless. Camille Strathmore wore a champagne-colored stole that her mother had flown in from France. Olivia Cranston had her hair professionally styled before dawn, her makeup applied to endure the entire day. They smiled for photographs, laughed with joy, and stood with the grace of young women who'd been raised to believe the world was within their reach. Behind the scenes, Janice remained still in her black robe. There were no embellishments, no unnecessary details. She declined the academic award the committee presented, stating she had no need for it. What she desired was a single moment, just one, and that moment had arrived. The dean, Dr. Leonard, approached her, holding a program. "Ready, Ms. Albury?" She met his gaze. She had been prepared. He offered a restrained smile and returned toward the podium. Camille and Olivia did not even look at her as they passed by in their elegant gowns. It was understandable. She was unnoticed once more, simply an element of the surroundings. The ceremony commenced as it always did. Names were announced, families applauded, and speeches were delivered. The school's jazz trio performed something gentle and unremarkable. Subsequently, Dr. Leonard approached the microphone. As we approach the end of this year's commencement, we have a particularly noteworthy announcement, one that, intentionally, has remained private until this moment. Students adjusted in their seats. Parents moved closer. Even faculty appeared puzzled. This year, the Board of Trustees authorized a confidential academic pilot program meant to enable working staff at our institution to pursue higher education with complete anonymity. The program demands both academic excellence and professional integrity of the highest order. Camille glanced at Olivia. Olivia showed a frown. Murmurs began behind them. Dr. Leonard proceeded. We are pleased to announce that the highest academic honor this year goes not to a student you might have learned alongside, but to someone many of you overlooked. He paused, then stated distinctly, "Please welcome Janice Albury, this year's valedictorian." A stillness hung in the air. Then, with a suddenness like a glass shattering in a quiet room, the news arrived. People turned their heads, their mouths agape. Camille remained motionless, her expression rigid. Olivia blinked, then attempted a laugh, only to find herself laughing alone. Janice proceeded deliberately to the stage. Her movements were controlled, her posture upright. She avoided looking at the assembled group until she reached the podium. Then, she surveyed the audience slowly, her gaze finally fixing on Camille and Olivia. Following this, she began to speak. I arrived at this school with a mop in one hand and a question lingering in my thoughts. Her voice resonated, strong and clear, without any doubt. I found myself questioning the true nature of this institution. Beyond the official statistics, the promotional materials, and the presentations, I wanted to determine if respect was readily available here, or if it was something that needed to be gained only by those who possessed the appropriate attire, footwear, and family names. The auditorium was completely silent. I dedicated countless evenings tidying up after those who spoke negatively about me. And when they observed me reading a book or attending a classroom session after hours, they mocked. She paused. However, my focus extended beyond mere reading. I was observing, studying, not solely to earn a degree, but to uncover solutions. She turned slightly toward the faculty, and now I possessed them. Students surveyed the room, adjusting in their places. Olivia's expression remained inscrutable. Camille clutched her program firmly, her knuckles white. Janice lifted her chin. I stand here today, not just as your valedictorian, but as a reflection of the very things that Elmwood High claims to stand for: growth, opportunity, and truth. But she hadn't revealed everything yet, and what she said next would change the room forever. You could hear a cough from 3 rows back. A chair creaked. A phone buzzed quietly against someone's hip, but no one moved to check it. A hush fell over the room as people leaned in, anticipating Janice's next words. She proceeded deliberately, taking a drink of water, briefly reviewing her notes, and neatly folding them. Then, she raised her gaze. I'm sure some of you are wondering how I came to be here. She began, gesturing to her robe and the podium. A few members of the front row, largely faculty, nodded in agreement, seemingly unaware they had done so. My presence here wasn't solely for the purpose of earning a degree, she added. 2 years ago, the university board contacted me following concerns raised, discreetly, privately, regarding the increasing atmosphere of class division and privilege within Ashworth Academy. They requested I consider a position, but not as a faculty member, not as a consultant, as a janitor. At this, the room shifted. Janice allowed the silence to linger. My purpose was to observe. Away from executive suites and scheduled gatherings, I observed. In the corridors, the athletic facilities, the classrooms buzzing with after-hours conversations where students felt safe to speak openly, believing they were unobserved. I was attentive. A woman among the parents visibly expressed discomfort. Over a period, I noted seemingly minor incidents. Yet, these minor incidents accumulated. I saw how some students treated those they perceived as outsiders. I noticed how the lack of intervention from adults permitted that behavior to escalate, and how some of you, who should have been more informed, chose to ignore it. She looked toward the staff. Some of you were aware, and you remained silent. The words struck with force. Camille's mouth felt parched. Olivia had ceased breathing through her nose. She remained motionless, as if blinking would make her vanish. The most troubling aspect, Janice continued, is that the behavior was not concealed. It was open, commonplace, accepted, and frequently it was encouraged, amidst smiles, with focus, and with widespread recognition. She paused, taking a moment. I'm not here to criticize you. I'm here to offer a reminder. Her tone became gentler. You cannot determine someone's worth based on their clothing or their profession. You cannot assess dignity through financial status or lineage. She lowered her gaze briefly, then raised her head with renewed focus. I once had a daughter. Her name was Kira. She would have been your age now. A stillness fell over the audience, similar to a chilling breeze. She passed away before she had the opportunity to wear a cap and gown. I'm not sharing this to elicit sympathy. I am sharing it because I see her in all of you. I see who she could have become. And I wonder, if she had been here, would she have been ridiculed as well? No one dared respond. Perhaps not. However, what I know for certain is that if you depart here today, believing the world will defer to your name, you have already failed. She paused again. Education is not merely about books and tests. Remember how you handle the individual you believe you'll never require assistance from, because life possesses a peculiar tendency to shift unexpectedly. Subsequently, the final setback occurred. I have delivered my conclusive report to the board. My assessment has led to a restructuring of the scholarship program, emphasizing integrity and contribution rather than legacy. A comprehensive audit of disciplinary cases spanning the last 5 years will be conducted, and students involved in harassment, encompassing verbal and social forms, will be subject to formal reviews. A subtle vibration resonated from the rear. Several parents murmured amongst themselves, their voices becoming more audible. Janice moved back a little. This isn't retribution, it's accountability. She fixed her attention on Camille, then Olivia, who had lowered her gaze to the floor. And accountability is not swayed by the wealth of your father. However, that wasn't the finality of the matter, as repercussions would follow even after the applause subsided. The ceremony concluded with noticeably diminished enthusiasm compared to its start. Some students applauded, while others seemed unsure how to react. A small number of families, appearing uneasy, left the room before the conclusion. However, Janice maintained her composure, smiling as she returned to her place. It wasn't the back row where she previously observed, but rather near the front, alongside board members and professors who now regarded her with a noticeable change, respect. Camille did not speak as she departed the auditorium. Her father was already waiting close to the car, his expression stern, avoiding her gaze. Olivia's mother, arms crossed, stood by the valley in stunned silence. There were no congratulations, no flowers, just silence. Inside, a small crowd had gathered around Janice. Teachers who had previously offered only a polite greeting were now shaking her hand. Mr. Del Toro remained at a respectful distance, waiting for an opportune moment. You didn't simply speak, he stated when they eventually talked. You transformed the entire atmosphere. Janice looked at him and smiled softly. The air had needed changing. Upon the lawn, several of the younger students expressed their awe. A girl wearing a red dress confided to her friend, "I wasn't aware she attended school," to which her friend responded, "I didn't know she could articulate herself so eloquently." A sense of belated recognition began to spread, an acknowledgement of what had been missed, what had been consciously disregarded. That evening, Janice was in her apartment, with a plastic container of leftover chicken salad and the commencement program placed on the table next to her. Her phone buzzed. It was an email from the board's director. The subject line read, "Thank you." The message stated, "Your final report is being reviewed. Policy meetings begin next week. Your courage will shape the future of this school." She set the phone down and exhaled. It wasn't relief, it wasn't pride, but a quiet, grounded sense of purpose. The kind that didn't require applause or accolades. Meanwhile, news about the graduation speech spread quickly. A video shared online by a teacher's assistant was already spreading among parents and alumni. The title was straightforward: Janitor or Genius, Larchmont's Graduation Shocker. Regarding Camille and Olivia, Camille was required to attend a disciplinary review. Her parents were obligated to participate. A scheduled summer internship at her father's firm was discreetly canceled. It was rumored that she would be asked to fulfill community service hours before receiving her diploma. Olivia's parents initially resisted, indicating they would pursue legal action and requesting apologies. However, upon the school sharing portions of Janice's records, containing witness statements and documented incidents, they ceased their objections. Olivia was permitted to graduate, although her honors were removed. Both girls remained silent regarding the matter, but those familiar with them observed a change. The teasing ended, and the hushed conversations also stopped. The following fall, Janice received a new opportunity, the role of Director of Equity and Inclusion Initiatives for the school district. She agreed to take the position. On her final day, as she walked the halls with her cart, she placed a sticky note on the supply closet door. It read, "Respect isn't owed, it's revealed." With clean floors, clear eyes, J.A., and a final goodbye, she left the mop behind. Leaving Larchmont Hills, she wore a navy blazer and carried a satchel, not to demonstrate professional advancement, but because she felt no further need for discretion. 1 week later, she returned, not in a work uniform, but as a guest speaker for the new staff orientation. Standing at the podium again, she addressed the teachers, new hires, and assistants. "Your job title doesn't determine your influence," she stated. "How you treat people when no one's looking does." Her voice resonated to the back of the room, and this time, everyone was attentive because they finally grasped the meaning. Respect isn't about volume, it's about the impact you make. If this story resonated with you, if it prompted you to reconsider how we treat people, we believe it's sufficient. Subscribe to the channel, share this story, and discuss it. The world would benefit from more individuals with qualities similar to Janice's, and it's valuable to remember that the most reserved person present could impart the most significant lessons.